There comes a moment in every believer's journey when heaven leans forward, when the angels stand at attention, when the clock of divine timing strikes its appointed hour. You may have walked through battles, tears, delays, and closed doors. But hear this today. God's powerful yes is about to break through in your life. Every breakthrough that we experience in life begins in the spiritual realm long before we see any evidence of change in the natural. God always initiates transformation from the inside out. When a believer prays, declares faith, and aligns their thoughts and actions with God's promises, something begins to shift in the unseen. The answer may not yet be visible, but heaven has already responded. Just like a seed planted underground, the miracle starts growing in a place where our eyes cannot yet see. Many people get discouraged because the situation around them has not changed, but spiritual progress is already happening. God moves first in the heart, strengthening faith, renewing confidence, and giving divine insight. Then He begins rearranging circumstances, people, and timing to bring His answer into physical reality. It is important to stay faithful and patient in this stage, because discouragement can uproot what God has already begun. The moment we understand that breakthrough is born in the spiritual realm first, we stop relying solely on what we can see and begin trusting what God has spoken. This mindset prepares us to receive with expectation, knowing that the miracle is already in motion even before our eyes witness its arrival. Sometimes when we are believing for something, the waiting season can feel heavy. Doors don't open when we expect them to, results don't appear immediately, and prayers seem unanswered. It is easy in those moments to assume that God has said no, but in many cases, He is simply saying, not yet. Delay does not mean denial. God is often working behind the scenes in ways we cannot see. He may be preparing the right opportunity, shaping our character, aligning the right people, or protecting us from something we are not yet ready to handle. If the blessing arrived too soon, we might not value it, sustain it, or be spiritually mature enough to carry its weight. Just as a seed takes time to grow roots before breaking through the soil, our blessings often grow quietly, invisibly, and slowly before we see the first sign of change. Instead of being discouraged by delay, we should recognize it as a divine process. God always works with purpose. His timing is perfect, and when the manifestation finally comes, it will not be late. It will arrive exactly when it is meant to. Waiting is not wasted time. It is preparation time. While we are waiting, God is positioning everything for a breakthrough that will be worth the patience. Faith is the vital connection point between you and God's supernatural yes. It is the bridge that links what God has promised to what you will eventually experience. Without faith, a person may hear God's word, know the promise, and even desire the breakthrough, but faith is what activates movement in the spiritual realm. Faith believes before it sees. It speaks before anything changes. It stands firm even when circumstances look impossible. Faith says, God's word is truer than what I feel or what I see. When we operate in faith, we align ourselves with heaven's reality rather than earthly limitations. Faith takes God at His word and refuses to let doubt rewrite the promise. It is not based on emotion or temporary conditions, but on the unchanging character of God. Many people miss breakthroughs not because God didn't speak, but because doubt, fear, or discouragement persuaded them to let go before the miracle arrived. Faith is not passive. It acts, prays, declares, and moves forward even while waiting. When you choose faith, you are essentially saying to God, I trust your promise and I trust your timing. That trust gives heaven room to move. The moment faith is engaged, the supernatural begins shifting to bring God's yes into reality in your life. God's timing is always perfect, even when it moves slower than our expectations. As human beings, we are naturally eager for immediate answers, instant change, and quick breakthroughs. When results don't come as quickly as we hope, we may start to question whether God has heard us or whether something has gone wrong. But heaven does not operate on our clock. God sees the full picture. The past we have come from, the present we are living in, and the future we cannot yet see. He knows the right moment for doors to open and the right season for blessings to unfold. If something arrives too early, it may overwhelm us, slip out of our hands, or fail to produce lasting fruit. God sometimes withholds the manifestation because He's preparing us internally, strengthening faith, refining character, building wisdom, and developing endurance. Just as harvest only comes after proper planting, watering, and growth, breakthroughs have a process. God is never late, even when His timing stretches our patience. Instead of frustration, we can learn to rest in His perfect schedule, trusting that He is arranging every detail so that when the blessing arrives, it fits our life beautifully. When it happens in God's timing, it brings peace, certainty, and lasting impact. The valleys we walk through in life are not signs of abandonment, but seasons of preparation. When everything seems difficult, silent, or uncertain, it is easy to assume something has gone wrong. However, God often uses the low places to build the strength, faith, and resilience required for the victories waiting on the mountain. In the valley, we learn to pray deeper, trust harder, and develop a dependency on God that success alone could never teach. Challenges refine us, remove what is weak, and shape us into people who can carry greater blessings without being crushed by them. If every moment were easy, we would never grow. The valley teaches lessons the mountain never could. How to endure, how to persevere, and how to believe when circumstances do not match the promise. By the time God elevates us into breakthrough, we are no longer the same person who entered the struggle. We are stronger, wiser, more grounded, and more equipped. What once might have defeated us now becomes our testimony. And when the breakthrough comes, we appreciate it with deeper gratitude because we remember the journey it took to reach it. The valley is not the end. It is the foundation for the miracle waiting just ahead. Obstacles are not always signs that we are off track. Many times, they are evidence that breakthrough is close. When a person begins moving toward the promise God has spoken, resistance often increases. The enemy attacks most intensely right before something significant is about to happen because he recognizes what's coming in the spiritual realm. Just as a woman experiences the strongest contractions right before birth, the pressure tends to rise most just before a miracle manifests. Challenges can be indicators that heaven is shifting things in your favor. Obstacles also train and prepare the believer. They strengthen spiritual muscles, sharpen focus, and push us to deeper dependence on God. If we faced no opposition, we might grow complacent and underestimate the value of what God is giving us. Instead, challenges cause us to pray more, believe more, and stand firm in faith. They transform us from spectators into spiritual warriors. Rather than asking, why is this happening? A better question is, what is being positioned for breakthrough? When resistance shows up, it often means movement is happening behind the scenes. God does not allow obstacles to defeat His children. He uses them to propel them forward. The very thing trying to stop you may be the final sign that your breakthrough is right around the corner. Prayer is not just a religious activity, it is the divine method through which heaven's plans become earthly reality. When a believer prays, they are not simply speaking into the air. They are engaging with God, aligning their spirit with His will, and inviting His power to operate in their situation. Many breakthroughs that people admire began quietly in a place of prayer long before anything changed on the surface. Prayer opens the doorway for God to move. It shifts atmospheres, changes hearts, and releases favor, wisdom, strength, and direction. While circumstances may look unchanged at first, prayer is already affecting what the eye cannot yet see. Angels move, obstacles weaken, and divine timing begins to unfold. Prayer also transforms the person praying. It strengthens faith, replaces fear with confidence, and gives clarity in moments of confusion. Sometimes prayer doesn't immediately change the situation, but it changes us so we can stand until the victory arrives. When we stop praying, we disconnect from the spiritual flow that carries God's answer. But when we persist, even without visible progress, we are demonstrating trust in God's character and timing. Prayer is the spiritual labor that brings the miracle from promise to manifestation. It is the bridge through which God's yes travels from heaven into our physical reality. Many times we feel farther from our breakthrough than we actually are, simply because we cannot see everything God is doing behind the scenes. In the natural, nothing may look different. Doors still seem closed, prayers unanswered, and circumstances unchanged. But spiritually, gears are turning, answers are forming, and situations are shifting in ways that will soon become visible. Just like a seed underground, growth is happening even when no sprout has broken through the surface yet. The enemy also tends to apply the greatest pressure right before a major breakthrough because he knows what is coming. This means that the struggle you feel might actually be the final opposition before your victory appears. Often, the moment we feel most discouraged is the moment just before God moves. That is why perseverance is so important. Breakthrough rarely announces its arrival before it manifests. One small decision, one open door, one conversation, or one act of favor is all it takes to transform everything. When you feel exhausted, disappointed, or like you want to give up, remember that you may be closer than you think. Your prayers have been heard, your faith has not been ignored, and God has not forgotten you. Keep standing because the miracle may be moments away. God is never limited by your situation, your history, or your present condition. Human beings often measure possibility by what they see: bank accounts, resources, education, age, background, or connections. But God is not restricted by any of these. He is the Creator who formed the world out of nothing, parted seas, raised the dead, and turned ordinary people into history shapers. When He decides to move in your life, no limitation is big enough to stop Him. What looks impossible to others is completely doable for God. Sometimes we look at our past mistakes, failures, or missed opportunities and assume that we have disqualified ourselves from breakthrough. But God does not base His plans on where you started. He bases them on what He knows He can do through you. He specializes in taking ordinary people and producing extraordinary outcomes. Your resume, your reputation, or your current condition is not the deciding factor. His power is, even when circumstances say there is no way, God can create a way that didn't exist before. He can open a door nobody saw, send a solution that makes no logical sense, or turn a setback into a testimony. When God is involved, limitation loses its authority. Instead of focusing on what you lack, focus on the limitless God who can transform everything in a single moment. Every promise God has spoken over your life already carries a divine yes in heaven, even if you have not yet seen it on earth. When God declares something, it is settled in the spiritual realm before you ever experience it in the natural. But for that promise to manifest, you must walk toward it in faith. Many people receive a word from God, a vision or a calling, but they stop moving because circumstances seem contrary. However, faith is action, stepping forward even when you cannot yet see the outcome. When you walk toward God's yes, you are demonstrating trust in His character, timing, and ability. This journey may include challenges, waiting seasons, and moments where nothing seems to be happening, but the yes remains unchanged. Just like Israel had the promised land guaranteed, they still had to march, fight, and move forward to take possession. The same applies today. God prepares the promise, but we must position ourselves to receive it. Every step of obedience, prayer, preparation, and persistence brings you closer to what heaven has already authorized. When you continue moving in faith, You align your life with God's intention, and in the right moment, His yes becomes visible, undeniable, and unstoppable. Many people limit their breakthrough by speaking only what they see instead of what they believe. When circumstances look difficult, the natural response is to talk about the problem, the pain, or the impossibility. But faith requires a different language. Speaking what God has promised, rather than what the situation currently shows, aligns your words with heaven instead of your surroundings. Words are spiritual seeds. What you consistently declare begins shaping your perspective, your atmosphere, and your expectation. When you speak fear, doubt grows. When you speak faith, confidence rises. This is not about ignoring reality, but choosing to give greater attention to God's truth than to temporary conditions. Every time you speak life, promise, and hope, you are reinforcing your belief and resisting the enemy's attempt to discourage you. Even when nothing seems to be changing, your words can keep your spirit strong and focused. Silence is dangerous in difficult seasons because the mind tends to drift toward negativity. That is why speaking is powerful. It interrupts fear and replaces it with faith. Your words remind your heart that God is bigger than the situation, that His promise stands, and that breakthrough is on the way. Speaking what you believe positions you to receive what God has already prepared long before your eyes can see it. When God releases a yes into your life, it is not just a small change. It carries the power to break chains, lift burdens, and open doors that were previously sealed shut. His yes brings transformation on every level. One divine moment can end years of struggle, shift your direction, and launch you into a completely new season. When God says yes, limitations lose their grip. The bondage of fear, doubt, addiction, lack, sickness, or discouragement begins to crumble because God's answer carries supernatural authority. Nothing and no one can override what God has approved. Many people spend years trying to force progress through human effort alone. But one yes from God can accomplish what personal strength never could. His yes brings peace where anxiety lived, clarity where confusion reigned, provision where there was lack, and hope where dreams had died. It is not just a change in circumstances. It is a shift in identity, purpose, direction, and spiritual atmosphere. When God moves, things accelerate. Doors open unexpectedly, favor appears, and opportunities begin aligning in ways no human could orchestrate. This is why we must stay in faith and avoid giving up too early. Even if everything looks stagnant on the surface, God may be preparing a yes that will change everything in a moment, proving His power and faithfulness in your life. Before any breakthrough shows up in your physical reality, you must first see it in your spirit. Every great move of God begins with inner vision, seeing the promise as already yours, even before anything changes on the outside. When you can picture the victory, the healing, the provision, the open door, or the restored situation in your spirit, you are aligning yourself with what God has already declared in heaven. Spiritual sight comes before natural manifestation. If you cannot see it inwardly, you will struggle to believe for it outwardly. Vision fuels faith, and faith pulls God's promise into your reality. This is why the enemy tries to attack your imagination, your hope, and your mental picture of the future. If he can make you see defeat, you will speak defeat. If he can make you see failure, you will walk like someone who has already lost. But when you choose to hold on to God's promise and see yourself winning, free, blessed, and walking in victory, you shift the atmosphere within you. That inner shift is powerful. It changes how you pray, how you speak, and how you move. Even if your environment stays the same at first, you are no longer the same person inside. Eventually, what you see within your spirit becomes what you experience in your life, because God fulfills the vision that is partnered with faith. When God makes a promise, no force, spiritual or earthly, has the authority to cancel it. His word is final, unshakable and backed by divine power. Even when circumstances look opposite to what He has spoken, the promise is still alive. The enemy may attempt to delay, distract, discourage, or create resistance, but he cannot stop what God has already set into motion. When God decides a blessing, breakthrough, or elevation is yours, every obstacle must eventually bow to His plan. What He declares in heaven will manifest on earth in the appointed time. Sometimes the challenge is not whether God will fulfill the promise, but whether we will hold on long enough to see it happen. The enemy knows he cannot remove God's promise, so he tries instead to weaken your faith, make you give up, or convince you that nothing is happening. But even in silence, God is working. Even in waiting, His plan is unfolding. He is arranging people, timing, opportunities, connections, and resources behind the scenes. Your job is not to make the promise happen. It is to remain aligned with God through faith, prayer, obedience, and expectation. The promise may take time, and the journey may involve battles, but the outcome is guaranteed. What God has spoken will come to pass, and when it unfolds, you will see that no enemy, delay, or circumstance was strong enough to stop the destiny God designed specifically for you. Before a breakthrough becomes visible in your life, you must prepare yourself to receive it with expectation. Many people pray for change but internally remain unsure, hesitant, or mentally unprepared for the very thing they are asking God to do. Getting ready means positioning your heart, thoughts, words, and actions in alignment with the belief that God is already working. This mindset turns waiting from frustration into preparation. Instead of saying, "I hope something happens," you begin living as though the promise is already on the way. You strengthen your faith, keep praying, make decisions aligned with the future you believe God is bringing, and refuse to allow discouragement to steal your confidence. God often brings breakthroughs to those who are spiritually, mentally, and emotionally ready to carry them. A new level requires a new mindset. If you are prepared before the miracle arrives, you won't be overwhelmed when it manifests. Preparation is also a sign of faith. It tells God, "I believe your promise so fully that I am getting ready for it now." This expectation creates momentum in the spiritual realm. When your attitude, actions, and words align with faith, you position your life to receive and recognize the moment when God's yes breaks through.